Thomas Forrester was never truly gone. While the world assumed he had stepped away to find himself, to heal, to move on, the truth was more dangerous. He hadn't left to disappear. He had left to hide from his own mind, from the obsession that had never truly let go. And that obsession had one name: Hope Logan. After months of radio silence, Thomas reappeared in Los Angeles like a shadow slipping back into its original shape. His return didn't make headlines. He didn't call a press conference or storm the offices of Forrester Creations. He moved quietly, deliberately, watching from the edges. But when he finally saw her, Hope, standing alone on the terrace at Il Giardino, sun hitting her hair just like it used to, something inside him cracked, not loudly, not with a roar, but with a quiet, chilling precision. She looked peaceful, yet distant, a woman who had survived a storm but wasn't yet healed from it. Thomas approached, unsure what to expect. But when she turned and smiled, warm and genuine, he knew what he felt wasn't over. Not even close. It wasn't until she casually mentioned that she'd ended her engagement to Carter that Thomas allowed himself to believe again that she could still be his. That the path was clear. The truth was, Thomas had tried. He had undergone therapy. He had committed himself to emotional regulation. He journaled every morning, every night. He wrote pages about intrusive thoughts, grounding techniques, the hope hallucination his doctors warned him about. He tried to ignore the moments he imagined her voice where it wasn't. He did everything by the book. But nothing prepared him for seeing her with Liam. Because it wasn't just a reunion. It was Hope laughing, leaning into Liam's shoulder, letting his hand rest on the small of her back in a way that used to be Thomas's entire dream. It was her smile. It was Liam's smug ease. It was the entire narrative of redemption shattering in a blink. That night, Thomas's journal entries changed. What had once been meditations and emotional check-ins became cold, strategic scribbles. He started listing locations, where Hope went after work, the times she picked Beth up from school, when Liam tended to show up at her place unannounced. He noted camera angles in the Forrester parking garage. He started mapping blind spots, areas of the city where surveillance was minimal. He even calculated traffic light cycles and average pedestrian traffic near Hope's apartment complex. At first, he told himself it was just a way to control the obsession, to externalize the intrusive thoughts so they wouldn't fester. But the notebook pages multiplied. And soon they stopped looking like therapy and started looking like planning. He labeled a page, Safe Retrieval Zones. He wrote things like, 1:10 p.m., coffee shop on Melrose, no cameras near alley exit. Or, Thursday, delivery schedule equals backlot open at FCHQ. Gate blind spot equals 22 seconds. And then came the page Carter found. Carter Walton had noticed Thomas acting strangely during a late-night visit to the Forrester offices. Thomas had left a stack of design mock-ups in the communal workspace. But underneath the papers, something fell, a loose journal page, torn at the edge, barely hanging on. Carter picked it up without thinking. But what he read stopped him cold. It wasn't just writing. It was a diagram, a street map, notated routes, circles and arrows. And at the bottom, in Thomas's unmistakable handwriting, primary hold site, minimal escape routes, no cell coverage, one entry, one exit, and underlined 3 times. Control the environment. Carter froze. He knew Thomas had a past, knew he had battled obsessive thoughts about Hope before. But this wasn't fantasy. This was logistics. This was premeditated. He couldn't ignore it, but he couldn't call the police, not yet. What if this was just a lingering remnant of Thomas's old compulsions? A page he wrote, then abandoned? If Carter called in law enforcement and it turned out to be nothing, Thomas's fragile stability could crumble. The media would swarm. Hope would be traumatized. The Forresters would never recover from that kind of scandal. Still, what if it was real? What if Thomas was planning to act? Carter made a choice. He would confront Thomas himself. And he would do it immediately. That night, Carter found Thomas at the design studio, working late. Or pretending to. His hands were shaking as he sketched meaningless lines, eyes unfocused. Thomas, Carter said, closing the door behind him. We need to talk. Thomas looked up slowly, masking surprise with a weak smile. Everything okay? Carter walked to the table and laid the journal page down in front of him. You tell me. The color drained from Thomas's face. It's not what you think, he said quickly. It's part of therapy. My doctor told me to. Don't lie to me, Carter snapped. This isn't journaling. This is an abduction plan. You're labeling drop zones, escape points, surveillance gaps. You think no one would notice you trailing Hope every day? You think nobody sees the way you watch her? Thomas stood, the panic bleeding through. I wasn't going to hurt her. I just needed to be near her. She was slipping away. She's not yours to hold onto, Carter roared. You know this. You've known it for years. And still you keep coming back to the same place. You say you've changed, but you're still drawing maps, Thomas. Thomas was shaking now. You don't understand what it's like. Every time I try to forget her, she comes back. Every time I get better, she touches my hand, she smiles that way, and everything unravels. I tried. God, I tried. But she belongs with me. Liam doesn't see her. He doesn't deserve her. You're sick, Carter said, softer now. And you need help before this goes too far. I am getting help. No, Carter said, firm. You're preparing to act. That's not therapy. That's escalation. Thomas didn't speak. Carter reached into his pocket and showed him a second copy of the journal page. I scanned this. If Hope disappears, if anything happens to her, I take this straight to the police. Thomas nodded slowly, visibly trembling. I won't do it, he whispered. I swear. I was just spiraling. You need to prove it, Carter said. No more following her. No more watching. No more writing about escape routes. Either you get real treatment or I go public. Thomas sat down, face in his hands. He didn't argue. Carter left the studio an hour later, uncertain whether he had just stopped a crime or pressed pause on one. Meanwhile, Hope knew none of it. She was with Liam, reading bedtime stories to Beth, smiling softly, unaware that in another part of town, someone had just burned a notebook filled with her name written in manic loops across every page. But danger doesn't burn easily. And obsession never dies quietly. Not in Los Angeles. Not on the bold and the beautiful. Thomas Forrester's descent was no longer a matter of if. It was how far. His obsession had always worn a polished mask. Carefully curated charm. Grand gestures. And just enough emotional restraint to fool even those closest to him. But the mask had started to slip the moment he returned to Los Angeles and laid eyes on Hope again. Her presence, her voice, her smile, it didn't just haunt him anymore. It rewired him. And this time, it activated something darker. Something that reason couldn't control. What began as restraint quickly mutated into rationale. Thomas told himself he had changed. He reminded himself of the therapy, the journaling, the accountability. But as he watched Hope drift toward Liam once more, those justifications began collapsing. Her laughter with Liam. Her casual touches. Their shared time with Beth. Every moment drove a deeper wedge into Thomas's fragile recovery until one idea took hold with unnerving clarity. Liam was the barrier. Remove Liam, and Hope would feel safe again. Remove Liam, and everything would finally fall into place. Thomas didn't need to eliminate Liam physically, not yet. He just needed to shift the dynamic. Slowly, subtly, strategically. So he focused on Beth. It began with innocent gestures. A dollhouse delivered to the cabin. Just something I thought Beth would love. A book of fairy tales Thomas had illustrated himself. An invitation for Beth to visit the Forrester design studio to see how dresses are made. Hope, wary but unwilling to spark confrontation, allowed it, supervised. But then came the stories. Thomas began weaving new fairy tales into Beth's bedtime routine. Stories of lost daughters, missing mothers, and little girls who thought they had one life but discovered it was a lie. Tales suspiciously mirroring Phoebe's fate, the baby Hope had once believed to be hers, stolen and raised under another name. He even used old sketches of Phoebe's nursery. He planted old lullabies Hope had sung during her grief. Beth began repeating them, asking questions, feeling the echoes of a trauma Hope had spent years burying. And that's when Hope understood. Thomas wasn't just bonding with Beth. He was manipulating her, and by extension, manipulating Hope. He was using the ghost of Phoebe to emotionally destabilize her, to awaken grief as a wedge between her and Liam, to replace memories of Liam with imagery that pointed back to Thomas. Hope confronted him at Forrester Creations. The room was quiet but her fury was seismic. You used my daughter, she said, voice shaking. You reached into the deepest wound I have, and used it to control me. Thomas didn't deny it. He looked at her with eyes that weren't pleading, they were convinced. I reminded her where love comes from. Where it stays. You've forgotten, but she hasn't. Hope backed away, heart pounding. We're done. No more visits. No more designs. No more excuses. You stay away from Beth. And from me. That was the final crack. The last thread holding Thomas to the illusion that he could manage his need. That he could stay near Hope without controlling her. That he could be the answer instead of the threat. The moment she cut him off, the plan changed. No longer about influence. No longer about gifts or bedtime stories. It was about escape. About restoring what he believed had been broken. He called it the reset. Thomas rented a cabin 2 hours north, secluded, private, disconnected. A place with no cell reception and only one road in or out. He began preparing it. Fresh linens, art supplies for Beth, Hope's favorite books from her childhood, even an old bracelet he'd kept from their time in Italy. He didn't see it as kidnapping. He told himself it was a break. A few days where Hope could be free from Liam's manipulation. Free from judgment. Free to reconnect with Beth in a controlled, safe space where Thomas could rebuild their dynamic without interference. He planned every detail. He watched their routines. He waited for the moment Liam would be away, a scheduled business trip to San Francisco. He knew Beth's school schedule. He knew the path Hope took for her midday yoga class. And he knew the trail that passed through the canyon behind the studio. Quiet, isolated, with a parking lot barely used. The day came. Thomas parked his car 3 blocks away. He wore gloves, a hoodie, sunglasses. He followed Hope at a distance, waiting for her to take the trail back from class. Earbuds in, unaware. But then, hesitation. Not from her, from him. He stopped walking. His heart raced. His hands trembled. He pulled out his phone, opened his notes app, the one he used instead of journaling now, and stared at the words he had typed the night before. She doesn't understand now, but she will. Take her somewhere quiet. Help her see. His thumb hovered over the screen. And in that moment, Hope turned around. She saw him. Their eyes locked. Shock. Fear. Recognition. Thomas? She called, uncertain. What are you doing here? He froze. Then forced a smile. Just out for a walk. Hope didn't buy it. You followed me. No, he lied. I thought maybe we could talk. Just us. You were going to take me, she said slowly, realization dawning. You were going to isolate me. Again, Thomas stepped forward. It's not like that. You need space. Time. You don't see what Liam's doing. I see you, she snapped. You haven't changed at all. You're just hiding the obsession behind therapy words and fairy tales. He reached for her wrist. Too fast. She stepped back. Don't. Just then, another voice broke the tension. Let her go, Thomas. It was Carter. He had followed Thomas, not trusting their last conversation to be the end of it. He had seen the hoodie, the gloves, the route, and now he stood between Thomas and Hope, jaw clenched, ready to end this madness. Thomas backed away, wild-eyed. You're ruining everything, he hissed. She just needs to feel again. No, Carter said. She needs to be safe. Hope pulled out her phone and called Ridge. 30 minutes later, Ridge, Brooke, and a Forrester security team arrived. Thomas didn't resist. He sat down on the trail, hands on his head, whispering to himself. She'll see. One day. She'll see. Hope didn't cry. She didn't run. She stood tall, breathing hard, watching the man who had haunted her for years finally unravel completely. Thomas was placed on psychiatric hold for evaluation. No charges were filed, not yet. Ridge begged Hope not to press criminal charges, citing Thomas's condition. Carter gave a statement to the board, and the Forresters quietly agreed to distance the company from Thomas indefinitely. Hope went home. She held Beth. She stared at the sketchpad Thomas had once given her and threw it in the fireplace. And that night, alone in her room, she whispered to herself, never again. But in the darkness of a hospital room on the outskirts of LA, Thomas still whispered her name. The city plunged into darkness just after 10:03 p.m. A cascading blackout swept across Los Angeles. An infrastructure glitch, according to early reports. But Thomas Forrester had been counting down to that very moment for days. Weeks. Every failed plan, every moment of hesitation, every journal page soaked with compulsion had led him here. This wasn't improvisation. This was design. At Forrester Creations, the late-night emergency lighting flickered above Hope Logan's workspace. She had stayed behind to review final garment samples, unaware that she was alone in the building by design, not by coincidence. The entire production wing had been emptied early. The building's security protocols, switched to manual due to the outage, had been overridden. And someone had deliberately cut the backup generator's internal feed. The elevator system was down. The only way out? The maintenance access shaft. Thomas moved quickly, silently. Dressed in black, gloved hands, face steady, he approached from the upper deck, using the engineering stairwell. He had rehearsed this, not just in motion but in mindset. His journal entries in recent days weren't stories, they were blueprints. Emotional, logistical, psychological blueprints. Hope didn't hear him at first. She was bent over a mannequin, trying to adjust the seam on a layered bodice. When the lights finally went dead, she muttered to herself, annoyed but not alarmed. She fumbled for her phone flashlight. That's when she heard the voice. Hope, it's me. She turned fast. The light caught Thomas's silhouette. She stepped back instinctively. What are you doing here? Helping, he said. You need to come with me. Just for a little while. Just to clear your head. I know how stressed you've been. Everything will make sense once we're away from all this, away from Liam. Her eyes narrowed. You planned this? I planned peace, he said. You're not thinking clearly. You haven't for months. I kept trying to stay away, to manage it. I even thought I was getting better. But I see you with him, and it restarts. The noise, the patterns, the compulsions. I've tried to fight them. But they win, unless we're together. Hope backed away. You need help, Thomas. Not this. He reached out gently, not grabbing, not forcing, yet she flinched. That reaction stung deeper than a slap. Please don't do that, he whispered. You're making me into something I'm not. I'm not a monster, but every light that flickered out, every silent hallway, every overridden camera said otherwise. Suddenly, a metallic click echoed through the stairwell. A second voice shouted from the garage level. Hope, it was Carter. And behind him, Liam. The trap had been set, but not by Thomas. In the hours leading up to the blackout, Carter had been analyzing the city's electrical grid reports, noticing a strange discrepancy. Building 4, where Hope was working, had a separate substation feed, and unlike the rest of the grid, its outage timing was suspiciously early. He cross-checked Thomas's building access logs. There were gaps, deleted entries. It didn't add up. Carter had seen enough to move. He called Liam. They drove across town during the blackout, knowing Thomas was no longer operating in theory, but in execution. Now, in the dim glow of emergency lights and red battery beacons, they stood between Thomas and the exit ramp. Thomas didn't run. He didn't lunge. He didn't scream. Instead, he looked at Hope with pure exhaustion in his eyes. You need to hear it, he said. Both of you. All of you. He turned to Carter and Liam, chest heaving. I tried to control it. I really did. I wrote it all down. I showed up for therapy. I followed every breathing technique, every visualization. I stayed away. I swallowed the thoughts, the rage, the delusions. But every time I see Hope with him, my brain snaps. It loops. It convinces me she's mine. That if I just take her away, just get time alone, I can reset her. Reset me. And then the guilt kicks in. And then the shame. And then it restarts. He took a step forward, hands open. You think I haven't tried to fix it? I live with it. It owns me. I wake up with Hope's name in my mouth. I hear wedding bells in my head when she walks into a room. And I know it's wrong. But knowing doesn't stop it. Hope didn't speak. Her arms wrapped around herself like armor. Liam moved closer to her, instinctively protective. That triggered Thomas again. You see? He's always there. Always pulling her back. I never had a chance. Carter stepped between them. It's over, Thomas. Thomas let his hands fall. Yeah, he said softly. I think it is. Security arrived. Then Ridge. Then Brooke. The truth had come crashing out too fast for spin. The control was gone. All that remained was the aftermath. They didn't arrest Thomas on the spot. Ridge intervened, holding back officers, demanding privacy, pleading for his son. Brooke stood beside him, face unreadable, hand shaking at her side. Hope, arms still crossed, stepped forward. Her voice was steady, cutting through the thick tension like a blade. I want it on record. I want no contact. Not through Ridge. Not through Brooke. Not through Forrester Creations. Nothing. No proximity. No letters. No messages. I am invoking every legal protection I can. For myself. For Beth. And for Liam. I will not be manipulated. I will not be rescued by Thomas again. I will not be collateral damage to his fantasies. Brooke's lip quivered. Ridge didn't argue. He simply nodded. 2 hours later, Thomas was admitted into a psychiatric care facility under mandatory observation. Not arrested. Not booked. But not free. Ridge and Brooke stood over the signed intake documents. The doctors had made it clear, this wasn't a 72-hour hold. This was long-term, structured, medicated, invasive, painful. Ridge had once believed love and family could heal Thomas. Now he had to believe science might do what they couldn't. At the cabin, Hope tucked Beth into bed. Liam waited silently at the kitchen counter. When she sat beside him, she didn't cry. She just stared at the blank wall and said, he waited until the power went out. Liam nodded. He had it all planned. I thought I was done being a victim, she whispered. Turns out, I'm someone's plan. No, Liam said. You're someone's survivor. Hope turned to him, eyes wet but fierce. Then starting tonight, we live like survivors. And that means boundaries. Permanent ones. She held his hand tight. No more forgiveness for obsession. No more second chances for broken minds pretending to heal. I don't care what Ridge says. I don't care what Brooke wants. My family is my line. No one crosses it again. Across the city, in a secured room, Thomas Forrester stared at a white ceiling as doctors adjusted his medication schedule. He whispered Hope's name once. And the lights didn't answer back.
Oh,